And what's crazy about that is when you talk about, is this real life? That's when I realized too, that was I more in love with winning, right? Or was I more in love with the process of helping kids become better, right? And honestly, I figured out right then and there that winning and losing aren't that far apart. They're they invoke similar emotion, and they're temporary and they're gone. And if you bank on the feeling of success being the end all be all for you, you'll never really truly be happy.
614 Headsets is proud to be sponsored by Fundraising University Ohio. Fundraising University Ohio offers a variety of fundraising efforts that helps football teams run profitable, effective, and fast-paced fundraisers designed to raise the most money in the shortest amount of time to reach their fundraising goals. Fundraising University Ohio is locally owned, operated, and with their 6-step blitz system will help your team maximize profits. Brent Maxwell with Fundraising University will sit down and help you strategize and execute your fundraiser. If you're interested in us running a fundraiser for you, please contact Brent at the letter B, Maxwell at fundraising.u.net or 740-501-8946 to learn how you can get started with fundraising.
It's a good win. There's a lot of people. It's like Woodstock, except everybody's got their clothes on.
I'll eat a damn snack.
You're like my wife when you get in space. You just get lost.
It's a hat! Short steps are better than long steps. That's the only time in your life you're going to hear short is better than long. It's a hat!
Welcome back to 614 Headsets, the weekly podcast where we say strategy meets story. We're your hosts. We're 3 high school coaches from Columbus, Ohio, who absolutely love football and had an amazing time at the state clinic last week. I had a great time seeing some colleagues like Chris Roberts and Nate and everybody else. And then obviously had some great episodes of shooting some 4 quarters with guys. And that was great to get on with Coach McVay. But appreciate everybody joining in and sticking with us for this long. And if you're just finding the show for the first time, we're excited to have you. Boys, how's our week been?
Life's good. You already know, got back to rolling. But for us, my son's been sick, so it's been a grind. You know how it is.
Yeah. Sick kids, man. Ain't nobody having a good week when that happens.
Terrible.
I can't relate yet, but when I can, I'll be sure to text you guys both the very first time.
Donnie just lives the dream. You don't even ask him how.
And which really fits into the episode. Donnie had a hard time fitting into today's episode a little bit, which is great. But and I think people are going to see that. But don't forget, hey, we're getting ready. We're about a month out from hosting our second annual coaches clinic. The 614 Headsets clinic is coming on. It's March 15th. Saturday in Polaris at Cohatch, and we just want to invite everybody, head over to our website, see the speakers, see the schedule, see what's going on. We've got a great little website page that's going to show you all about that day and get a feel for how it's going to go down. It was a great year 1. We're excited about year 2. We think we've built it bigger than ever. We're excited about our speakers who are coming. Come, bring your staff, check it out. I promise you that and the social, you're going to get around a bunch of guys. You're going to learn a lot of ball. You're going to have a great time. Make sure you subscribe to the show, right? Help us out, right? Retweets, leave us comments, reach out to us, give us ideas. We run with those guys, and we really appreciate it because we're doing this because we're having fun, but ultimately we want to grow what we're doing and celebrate great coaches, great programs in this great game. Donovan, what are we getting into today?
Listen, we got a great episode with Coach Varney on lessons learned, specifically 10 lessons learned from losing and what that's like. And we were talking after the show. Coach Varney could write a whole book if he wanted to with the information he gave to us, and you're all about to hear or see. Make sure you tune in. There's some great lessons for all coaches at their stages, young, medium, or old, coached out. So whatever it may be, you get some good information.
Absolutely.
Got the one in.
I knew you just did it right there. But you know what? Hey, it is an uplifting episode. So we got to get into this uplifting segment, right? The max effort locker rocker. Football coaches, listen up. You spend hours in the weight room and on the field pushing your athletes to be their absolute best. But are you fueling their bodies with the right supplements to maximize performance and recovery? Max Effort Muscle provides safe, trusted, and effective supplements designed specifically for athletes. Trusted by Division I strength coaches and top college programs across the country, their lineup includes everything your team needs to train harder, recover faster, and perform at their peak.
Listen, everybody knows football is won in the trenches, so don't let poor nutrition be the weak link in your program. So you can reach out to them today and get your team on Max Effort Muscle. They work with pretty much any team, any size, any budget. You can visit maxeffortmuscle.com and email Tyler Treadway. His email is treadway@maxeffortmuscle.com to learn more about team pricing, partnerships, and get a custom package made for your team. Ryan.
I love it, and we got a few goodies from the clinic from them. Gave us.
I've been enjoying it. I've been snacking on stuff all week.
I like
had
it.
me some of their pre-workout over the weekend, and woo, I was getting it, man. I felt like I was back Donnie's age.
Thought of the pod today, man. I sat in a banquet yesterday. It was great. Coach Hartline was able to get in, or it was Monday night. Coach Hartline got the gold award, the National Football Founders. I was blessed to have a player honored there. And he gave a great speech, and I feel like it relates very well to this time that we're at, because you really want to have trust in your players. So he talked about the 3 C's that trust equals, right? That makes you be able to get to the trusted level of your players, your relationships with your bosses, your wives, anybody. It's going to take 3 C's. And the first one's character, right? Are you going to always show up and do what you do? Are you going to always show up and do what you said you're going to do? Are you going to be consistent in that? And then the second one is competency. Do you know what you're talking about, right? If you don't know what you're talking about, then no one's going to listen to you, right? And then the third one is connection, right? You have to have a personal connection and relationship with the person that you're trying to get trust from. You got to understand them. They have to understand you. And I think that goes right into like off season where we're all at right now, right? Like you want your kids to trust you and trust that you know what's best for the program and you're running the things the right way. And so you got to earn your trust. And those are the 3 C's to do it.
I think those 3 C's are fire for now. I think those 3 C's are fire for this episode too. So we hope you enjoy Coach Varney's top 10 lessons from losing. And I'm telling you right now, it's a playbook I wish I had in my back pocket in my past. And I think anybody listening is going to take something from this. Let's go.
Tonight will be an exciting episode for my guy, Tennyson Varney, one of my guys that I met when I first started coaching over at Pick North through Coach Hillerich, and then helped me transition into being a head coach. Super excited to hear what he has to say coming on to this episode. That I feel like this will be an exciting one. Varney, go ahead and talk about your journey.
All right. First of all, I appreciate you guys having me.
Back again.
That's right.
Yeah.
Real quick background. I was an OC for quite a while at Hamilton Township, applied for a bunch of jobs. And at that point in time, it was really hard to get a head coaching job. It was really difficult. I feel like it might be a little easier now in some cases, but it was really hard back then. Was the finalist for a bunch of jobs and then ended up getting a job that nobody wanted, right? Because your first job is like the worst job in America. So I took the job at Franklin Heights. And at that point in time, it's always a gamble, right? Everything you do is a gamble. So that was a big gamble. And it actually ended up paying off for me. I ended up turning a program around that hadn't won in a really long time, was on top of the world. And then talking about what we are going to talk about tonight without going too far into it. But then I took another job. And at that point in time, when I left Franklin Heights, it was the right time to leave. Could have taken a bunch of different jobs. Honestly, I had a lot of offers to go these places, but for some reason, I don't know if I'm just a glutton for punishment or I just like to take on really tall tasks, but I ended up going to Grove City High School where, without getting into it, it was a different situation. And I love the idea of the talent that was coming up through. And I love the idea that I could maybe turn that one around too. And you fell flat on your face with that one. So that's okay. And then I was able to get another job. After that, I went back to my alma mater at Hamilton Township. And I've been there for 5 seasons, been my 6th season coming up. And we've done pretty well. Taking a program over in COVID was one of the hardest things I've ever done. So you were behind the 8 ball from the very beginning, but it's paid off. We're doing pretty good. We're in a good place right now. The program's continually getting better. So the background.
Varney was also an ODU guy too. That's the other great connection.
ODU, baby.
Coach, you said Hamilton was your alma mater, right? That's what you said, going back even further.
Yep. Graduated 2000. Dating myself.
2000, the big kahuna.
Yeah, that's right.
Send all the old jokes over to him today. You know what I mean? Take it off
now,
me
when
today.
did you graduate?
Me?
Yeah.
2006.
Stop.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, 2006, man. So easy. All right. That's where the dogs eat.
Why
You know
Varney
what I
was so
mean?
much younger than you, Stout?
I don't know, man. I got to be on here with you every week. That's probably why. But hey, it ain't about me. It ain't about us. It's about the big kahuna, the bell of the ball tonight. All right, let's get into it, Ryan.
The best segment of them all. The Pick Six segment is powered by Storied Rivals. Sports, media, championships, friendships, and life lessons are among the most meaningful parts of the athletic competition. They are passionate about preserving them by offering the most unique highlight experience available.
That's right. And Storied Rivals delivers your team's content with services designed to change the way you experience these unforgettable moments now and for a lifetime. Storied Rivals now offers a complete team apparel and player shop customizable to your program. Contact them by email at info@storiedraivals.com to schedule an appointment with a member of their team. And hey, this is Varney's second time on. The first time around, he got the mini episode. He got the 4 quarters. He hasn't had the Pick Six segment where he doesn't know what's going to get asked. So what's your first question, Ryan?
All right, so we were talking about my two are from just like my classroom discussions this week. It was wild. Our kids were asking wild questions. What is your greatest fear in life, Varney?
Ooh, greatest fear in life. Okay, you want to know the truth? Being homeless. I honestly fear that. I had that when I got married. That was one of our marriage questions. They were like, what's your biggest fear in life? And honestly, being homeless. Like, that's something, because once you get to that point, it's really hard to get back from, right?
Yeah.
That's a good point. I thought he was going to say like snakes or spiders or something. He
I'll
went
cut a
deep.
snake's head off. I ain't worried about that.
That's valid. That's true.
I love it. Coach, both my questions will be football related. With the first one, so we just had the Super Bowl. If you could wave a magic wand and you get to pick next year's halftime performance, who are you picking?
Ooh, that's really good. Gosh, I wasn't ready for that. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to go way back, and I'm going to go Bone Thugs and Harmony. I think that would be an incredible halftime show. It would be incredible. Everybody be rocking.
I like that. I like what?
I'll have to look him up. Not very cultural. Sayers, don't pretend like you don't know who it is.
No, I actually do. I know.
I know Sayers knows who Bone Thugs and oh my gosh.
Hey, Donnie, I'm sorry. I cannot get behind you on that one, brother. Sorry.
There's a point. It's like, I know who that is.
Turn the dial once in a while. All right.
I'm gonna have tomorrow morning. We'll send you a couple you gotta listen to. That's pretty bad, man. But hey, some breaking news, man. Obviously, here in Columbus, 614 headsets. Matt Patricia is apparently going to be the DC at Ohio State. A lot of different takes. It's all over on social media. I just want to get your take, Varney. What do you feel? How do you feel about the pick?
I think it's great. First of all, just reading on it, knowing what I know. A lot of people are judging him from a failed time as a head coach. I feel similar to that, right? I think that he has been under some Hall of Fame coaches to learn football. I think that we're hiring him to be the DC. We're not hiring him to be the head coach. So we have to keep that in mind. I think he's got a great football mind. I think that he is going to bring a level of professionalism for the players at Ohio State. He's going to understand what it's going to take to play in the NFL. And it's going to translate very well. I'm excited to see what he brings as far as how's he going to handle a staff coming in. You know what I mean? Like, he's basically the new guy with people that are already here. So that's going to be the interesting part of it. And I've seen a picture of him today. He's slimmed down. He looks like he's healthy. Looks like he's ready to rock. So I think it's going to be a great hire.
I've watched a lot of the Coach podcast with him and Bill Belichick. And I just heard with him like a 3-hour one on Games and Names. I didn't know he was basically like an aerospace engineer, right? That was his background. And then they just figured out, I don't want to do this. And somebody just offered him like a $500 coaching job. And that's like where he started at. And so it was really cool to hear like his football journey. I'm excited about him because he's a guy that does a bunch of different personnel packages, which I think fits Ohio State and stuff too, with kind of what they've done. I feel like it's going to be a smoother transition. I like it, but I learned a lot about him. And if you get a chance, check it out. Some of that stuff's really interesting. Dive into the brain of both of those two.
Coach, my last question for you. If you could, or if you had to, and you had to make a career change, can't be football related, school teaching related, nothing related to what you do right now, what would that career change look like for you? What do you think you would end up doing?
I'd be a moonshiner in the hills of North Carolina.
I was going to say like lumberjack
just living it up, making the best moonshine. you've ever seen in your entire life.
I can see this guy being a butcher, just ripping heaters, chopping up meat.
Living that great life. No, honestly, I would like to truthfully probably get into like broadcasting, radio, something along those lines. Like I enjoy that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
Can we talk about how bad sports broadcast can be at sometimes? What they're calling plays and the color commentary. Like I had to turn playoff games off, and the high school playoff games that are televised, and no disrespect, but I had to turn it off because I was just like, I can't listen to this anymore.
Yeah,
and even at the higher levels of things they call. So I'm with you. Maybe if we're both ever not calling the X's and O's, Varney, I got you. We'll start our own little thing.
Let's do it.
Some of the worst are those offshoot bowl games you get where you're like, okay,
oh man,
they have no business.
What they're gonna say.
All right, Coach. My second question, still football related, and sounded like you're a pretty big Ohio State fan. So this might be an obvious one, but if you could only pick one to watch the rest of your life, college football or NFL football, which one are you picking?
College football.
That's what I figured.
Oh, yeah.
I love the NFL, but I've got distinct thoughts about professional sports. I don't watch baseball till October. I can't watch the NBA until June because it doesn't really matter. There's too many games. Load management's the thing now. I like to watch people when it's crunch time. In the NFL, you can lose so many games and it really doesn't matter. But in college football, which honestly is turning a little bit now, you can lose a few games and still make it. But it's a lot more cutthroat when it comes down to it. I think it's a lot more genuine football. I think it's closer to high school football than it is anything else. So
I agree with that because I feel like in the college realm, even though you said, yeah, you can almost lose a couple now, maybe two, right? But still, you lose that one, your team better be playing lights out. It better be going crazy. You know what I mean? Because it's dangerous. Like you might not make the playoffs. So I agree. I think they play for something.
I think in the next couple of years, we're going to benefit, though, from that. I think now we're going to see teams not duck each other as much, and we're going to start to see some more premium matchups that are really pushed by TV, how all this is tied into TV deals, and they're going to set these marquee matchups up. I think we're going to benefit. Obviously, schedules are made way in advance, but I think we'll see a good return on that. NFL playoffs does deliver, though, when it matters.
I agree. So it's incredible.
If you made me pick a whole season, I'm with you. So that's a good pick. All right, last one. Coach, this is going to get us into where we're going to talk about too, but I was sitting around and thinking, and a question I haven't asked anybody yet, a shining or memorable moment from last season. What's something that stood out to you about last season that you held on to as a takeaway or something memorable?
That's a good question. Probably a shining moment would be when we were down and out. So we had a lot of injuries. The fact that we had a couple kids who probably never thought they would be on a varsity squad or even contributing. They were younger freshmen and sophomores stepping up and absolutely buying in and getting better and playing for the team. I thought that was one of the best shining moments. It's easy to win with stars. It's not easy to win with guys who are role players. And those dudes were awesome to coach. They were fun to be around. I thought that was probably the shining moment.
That's always the best. That's always the best when you got guys injured and you're still getting the dubs and you're still like coming out successful.
He's part moonshiner, part man with a heart. I love it. Let's get into this.
Ready to cut a snake's head off.
All right, the main topic for tonight is lessons learned from losing, specifically 10 lessons that Coach is going to give us that he's learned through years from his experiences. And, of course, the main topic tonight is sponsored by First Down Playbook. First Down Playbook is the nation's leading playbook and play design software with over 35,000 professionally drawn, editable team plays with notes and full playbooks. Start from, you'll be on your way to getting an edge over the competition. First Down Playbook could be your entire team management system with practice schedules, scripts, custom quarterback wristbands, and more. And if you use the code HEADSETS25 or mention the show, you get $100 off what's already the most affordable option in today's game. So the link's in our show notes. You can find it anywhere over any of our Twitters or our show Twitter. So go look for it now. This is the time to reevaluate your needs.
Coach Varney, I think it's your turn. You ready to take it over?
I want to cut anybody off there. So really, to be honest with you, I'm an open book with experiences and those kind of things. I don't really shy away from what's happened. It's funny because I hired a guy from Georgia on my staff who's incredible. And he told me one time, he's been in some losing programs and similar to the background that I've been. He's, hey, that coach right there, he's really good, but he'll be great when he learns how to lose and coach. And that is the truth. I firmly believe you ignore things and you just overcome and you just let it be. You think you're the best until you're really losing and you have to examine every single thing about everything. That's what I'm talking about tonight. Some of it's funny, some of it's not, some of it's informational, some of it's probably people think I'm an idiot. So it's pretty good. The first thing I'll mention tonight is you are never as bad as you think you are. That's lesson number one for me. All right. You're never as bad as you think you are. In the moment, you're really down and out. You're really at the bottom of the barrel. But truth be told, when you look back and examine it, it tells a different story. I was 2-28 at the school. And the craziest thing about it is if you look at 2017, 2018, 2019, my schedule, 28 of those wins, all right, 26 of them were against winning record teams. All right. 2017, I played Pick Central, who won the state title. I played Pick North, who played in the regional final. Hilliard Davis and lost to Pick Central in the regional final. It's just wild. Reynoldsburg won 2 playoff games. Like, it's just insane the situation that you're in. 2019, Pick Central wins the state again, right? Out of those games that I played that year, some of those teams were playoff teams that won a game. So when you look at it like that, at the time, you just think you're just the worst team in America, right? You're like, we'll never get better. But the truth be told is winning is relative, right? Winning is relative. It matters who you're playing. It matters what situation you're in. So you have to be a bigger picture thinker when it comes down to it. Really hard to do in the process while you're in the thick of it. But now that I'm out of it and now that I can get back into it very quickly because it can turn any time, I've learned that lesson to think about it like that. It's never as high. It's never as low. You got to be in the middle on everything. So that's where I'm at. That's a little bit of background of what the experience was. Lesson number 2 for me: what has worked doesn't always work. So just because you think you've got it figured out does not translate to multiple places. I'm sure you guys have been in similar boats with that, where if you look at me personally, I hadn't really lost until I got there. I lost temporarily at Franklin Heights, but it was turned around very quickly. And we'd always been known for scoring tons of points and just doing all these things. And then all of a sudden you take that into a situation and you just think that's going to be really good. And it's not, right? The other thing too is what has worked doesn't always work. Staff, the lesson I learned is staff matters. And that's, no kidding. That's common sense. But I took a lot of my staff from the old job that I was at and tried to plug them into a new spot. And it was like a bomb went off. It didn't work. The other lessons that I learned when it comes to staff, when we're talking about what doesn't work, you got to be very cautious when you take a job and people tell you who to hire. I don't know how I ignored that. I don't know what I didn't see that coming, but I hired a guy who I got the job over top of, and some of his guys, right, who have been there for a long time, and they were always working against me. So I think the lesson I learned from that is, hey man, do your homework on who's on your staff. And also don't hesitate to cut them free. Don't ignore anything that you see is going to be bad for the program. So that's a big one.
I'll chime in.
Yeah.
So, I love it. I think that's really good. I had a moment just looking back, and this was when I was a head coach in the past too, and had a coach who clearly was becoming an issue or we had problems with as the year went on. Accountability, timeliness, professionalism. It blew over like in a week 9, week 10 type of a practice. Decided to be the bigger man and both of us and to apologize and clean things up for the kids and move forward. Was really presented the option of, if you don't want him to coach, you could cut him now. But I'm like, that ain't right. We're going to finish this. And it blew up in the game. You know what I mean? And so looking back, I'm with you. It became a point where I think as a head coach, and I think it's harder to do maybe when you're younger. I think you always have to trust your gut. If your gut is telling you something, and you might get into this later, I don't know, you got to go with it, because at the end of the day, like, you're the one that has to live with those choices and those decisions. Yeah. And more times than not, what do? As time goes on, you look back, you're like, why didn't I do that? So
100%.
I think that's a really good point when it comes to the staff stuff.
Look, like things not working at one place that did it another was perfect. Is a perfect example for me. Is like being at Pick North, knowing where we've won, knowing how the program ran is just a machine. That's all I knew out of college and high school football, right? And so in my coaching era, right, not playing, but I feel like for me, then I went to Northland, and I'll never forget like the first year, and then the second year, we were like just not good, right? Like we were just not rolling. The kids were not listening. Like it wasn't clicking. And then one of the kids, I'll never forget, his name was Corey Cradoff. And he looked at me, he was like, man, this just isn't Pick North, coach. Like this isn't Pick North. Like that stuff ain't going to work here. Like we don't care about that stuff. You know what I mean? And I remember driving home that day. I'll never forget. It's just like one of those times that changed me. I was like, all right, I have to change pretty much everything. Like that, none of this stuff's going to work with these kids. And then like from that day on, I think treating the job that I was at, treating Northland as Northland, right? Like, and treating that as Northland, like Pick North is Pick North, Northland High School is Northland High School. I feel like in the realm, in the world that we're in, no place is the same by any means.
Mm-mm. And that's one of the hardest things to do, honestly, is to separate that. Because we learn through experience, right? That's the ultimate teacher for us. So we gain that and we try to use it, but sometimes it don't work. My next thing is lesson learned. All right. Learning to ask yourself, is this real life? Okay. And why I say that is I got to tell a funny story here. So this is when I knew life was changing for me. All right. I was very optimistic. It was the second year. We had went 0-10 that second year. And here we are, paint this picture for you. We're playing Pick Central week 10. We're getting absolutely destroyed. They're handing the ball off to linemen to run 60-yard touchdowns. And going back to what matters is staff. So I'm sitting in the locker room, and this was is this real life moment for me. I'm like, hey guys, I'm trying to be positive. I'm talking to everybody. And like most staffs do, you get together after the game, you go have some tea, hang out a little bit. And I looked at everybody and I was like, hey, where do you guys want to go? Everybody ready to go? I'll buy. Let's go. Everybody ready to go? And it was crickets. Not one single person wanted to go, except for one person. He's still on my staff, but he was too scared to say he wanted to go at the time. And we still laugh about that story to the day. But what I learned in that whole thing is when you start to lose, people back up from you. So the closest people to you will back up the furthest away because they don't want to catch a stray bullet. So that right there was a very humbling experience for me that night, is the fact that I brought these guys on. Some of them I was made to bring on, and we'd worked so closely to try to do some stuff. And then all of a sudden, when it's not going your way, you can't even do the little things, right? And to throw fire or gas on the flame at the same time, right 30 seconds after that happens, my wife calls me and says it's raining in our living room. It was a torrential downpour and the roof failed me. I just got a new roof. It failed and it was flooding my entire house at that time. So when you think things can get bad, they can always get a little bit worse. And that's when I really learned to, number one, separate things, right? I'll never get to the point again where I'm not who I am and relying on other people, because you're ultimately the one who's going to be judged at the end of the day. So that was a tough lesson to learn for me, right? You always talk about we're in this together, but really at the end of the day, people will back up from you. And honestly, I took that into my next job and I hired more people who would stand up and say, yeah, let's go and we'll fix it, that kind of deal.
And then the vice versa of that, though, coach, is like when you're winning, how close people try to become to your program, right? I would venture to say, just for me, last year, obviously being a 9-1 season, and the year before being 5-5 and winning the city, and this year being able to win a conference championship, everyone wants to be a part of our program now of some sort of fashion. Everyone talks about it. Dude, my first 2 years, people were like, walk through the hallway, football team sucks. Like, you guys are terrible.
Yeah.
It'd just be like, it would be miserable because it's like, what, like a 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old kid like telling me like, your team sucks, dude. Like, you're a terrible coach.
And what's crazy about that is when you talk about, is this real life? That's when I realized too, that was I more in love with winning, right? Or was I more in love with the process of helping kids become better, right? And honestly, I figured out right then and there that winning and losing aren't that far apart. They invoke similar emotion. and they're temporary and they're gone. And if you bank on the feeling of success being the end all be all for you, you'll never really truly be happy, because I had a lot of success and I've been at the bottom. And at the same time, they're similar when it comes to all, like how quickly, like you said, people jump on or jump off, right? Pretty wild. The other one, okay?
Look at Donnie's writing these notes down viciously over there. Like, he's working because he hasn't had a losing season.
Quiet.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy's never had to deal with more than 2 losses back to back his whole coaching career. So, like, he's right now.
Short coaching career.
Maybe.
Listen, I lost plenty as a player, but to your point, it's I could count probably how many losses we've had on, 1.5 hands. So it's
that's incredible for you. To be honest with you,
you should have stopped talking. Like, with the vibe of the episode, you could tell you did not want to say that.
No, that's incredible. I hope you lose soon, but don't take that personally. But listen, no, but in all reality,
I hope you lose and you're not on my staff.
I was about to say, if we're losing,
I've ever heard. I hope you lose soon. But
I'm just kidding. No, but what happens is I've learned through this whole process of being up and down, high and low. You celebrate every single, thing that you can celebrate. Listen, I got to tell this story because it's terrible, but we hadn't won a game at any level for so long. And we actually beat Gehanna in a JV football game. And myself and the JV football coach, buddy, we went on a bender. We celebrated for 8 hours. Like, we didn't pass go. We were high-fiving. You'd have thought we won the Super Bowl. But we were just holding on to any bit of success at that time. It's really sad to say it, but it makes you appreciate winning that much more, honestly. Next one, risk to reward. When you're a young coach and you just want a job, right? I want that job. Who's going to hire me? I know that I'm going to build the best weight room. I'm going to do the best this, best that. You better learn to look at risk to reward. I was stupid. I took a huge risk the first time and it paid off. I took an even bigger risk the second time and it did not pay off, right? And part of that is ignoring red flags, right? I'm sure it's hard, right? I almost equate it to where, you're in an abusive relationship, but you just want it to work so bad that you'll just push through it, right? You got blinders on. And that's exactly how I would describe that. What's crazy is both jobs I got hired at, I go through the interview process. The AD is incredible, right? We're on the same page. They see my vision. We're sharing the same everything. Who's going to make the choices, all that stuff. And then both of them, within 1 month of hiring me, left and got a new job. And then I got 2 replacements who, let me tell you something, right away, if I could do it all over again, the lesson learned from this is the moment they name a new AD, you better get in the office, sit down and tell them what you expect and your vision, right? Because if you don't, and you let it linger, you've lost control. And it's going to be all about what they say. During the hiring process, some of the red flags that I ignored were the guy before me is an incredible coach. I equate this to where you ever have college coaches come in and they're like, oh man, that guy's pretty good, but we're going to make him better. We're going to take him to a new level. Like, you're an idiot. Like, you don't know how to coach. And I almost did that myself, like just being ignorant. Oh, it had to be because he just didn't know how to handle it or just couldn't do it. And that's the biggest lie you can tell yourself. There's a lot of really good football coaches out there. And I can't say enough that whatever job you go to research that part of it.
I think that's the funny part about this job, though. People judge you off that, like wins and loss, your record, right? Like, they look at it as that. Because I know, obviously, like my first 2 years, what were we, 3-6? So we were like 6-14 or something like that in that first 2 years with the COVID season. And people are looking at me, does this dude even know what he's doing? Like, my first game, we're losing 42-0, and people are chanting, go back to Pick North, like in the stands. And it was wild.
It's crazy because along those lines, the hiring process, this was the key that stuck out to me. After you're out of the flames and you're like looking back on the whole process of what just happened, the one thing that stuck out to me the most was, who has control? That's the number one question that I would ask. If any young coach gets hired at a job, you need to be upfront and blunt and say, who has control at this job, right? Because if they don't answer immediately, you have the final say. You might want to move on. Like, you might want to move on. Realize that there's different expectations will crush your program. You know, the one that I was at, the coaches had different expectations from the parents, had different expectations from the admin, and the community lived in a dream world, right? That is a recipe for disaster, right? The other red flag that I learned, like these are things you just, in the time you don't learn, but when anybody says, let's get this program back to somewhere longer than 10 to 15 years ago, you better run, and you better run as fast as you can, because the whole time you're going to be there, they're going to compare you to 10 to 15 years ago. And just like you said, every job's different. So is every decade's different, right? Like these are different kids. So that's a big one.
How do you balance the community that lives in dream world, but if you start to even show signs of that dream world, like they're the most supportive, involved community, versus sometimes you see ones that just, no matter your success, like they're not even starting to believe in that dream. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The balance to it is run. That's the balance. I'm gonna be honest with you, because I would have people say craziness. You just got to get them out of the hallways and onto the football field, right? That's one of those ones that everybody says. And it's, buddy, you got to come and look. You got to come and see what's going on here. Incredible kids. They are salt of the earth, going to be great doctors, lawyers, all this stuff. Not to the competition level that I said earlier. And the real big thing is the expectations of the admin is what's huge here. They told me, this was when I was writing this stuff up, thinking about it, I'm like, I am such an idiot when it comes down to it. The admin told me, hey man, you're fine here. The parents will fire you way before we ever fire you.
That's what a flag.
That's a line, right? Is that not a great line?
Yeah,
Like that one, that's one that will always stay with me, because you don't want to be in a job where the admin has no expectations, because that means they're going to give you no support, right? That's what it comes down to. So you want some expectations of your admin, but also reality. And
I think the hard part is this though too. I think naturally as a coach, you're super competitive. So you're always saying, I can do that. I'm going to be the guy, like, and you're hungry and you want to do more. And so you look back, and as you get older, you see these flags, and maybe now you can put them in your toolbox, and they're there to help you in the future jobs. But when you're a young guy and you just want that job, or you want to be that head coach, or you want to do that, the sad part is you're going to ignore all this. But hopefully, maybe like somebody who's listening might listen to this, and they might write some of these down, and they might be like, hey, I'm a coordinator, or I'm an assistant coach, I'm in a good position. And they might learn from the fact that I'm going to wait my time until maybe the right spot opens, because everybody's paths are different. But I do think there is some, at times, like there's times I wish, why did I go to Division 7 school straight out of college, and I didn't even know where it was? And then I could have just gone and sat as an assistant somewhere for a long time. Both are, you're going to learn a lot in different ways, but the sad part is I have a lot of flags I could talk about too, but I'm not going to do that. But it's tough because you're never going to learn them or know them until you've been through them.
And my word of advice for any young coach who's just dying to be a head coach is, don't take a bad job. There's rough jobs. There's jobs that are in down a little bit, and then there's bad jobs, right? Bad jobs you have to stay away from. I took that job in the long run of, I knew the talent level at the lower levels. Don't ever do that either. You know what I mean? Because we live in a win now society, right? This isn't the 70s where they let the coach build the program up for a decade to win, right? That ain't how it works. And luckily for me, I had an older guy on my staff who he ended up leaving after year 2 because he just couldn't take it no more. But he gave me good advice. He said, the minute you feel like it's time to go, you better go. And I lived by that. So right when I felt it was time to go, I went. Better to fire yourself before you get fired. That kind of deal. Leave while you're still liked. One of the things that I'll say is, like, the next lesson that I had is, I labeled it, can I have it back? What I learned from this experience is I wanted to come in and be this powerful CEO, right? I'm gonna call the shots. I'm gonna hire these coordinators. I'm gonna do all this. We're gonna be organized. All of these great things. But at the end of the day, with every loss that happened, you lose more of your program, and you cannot get it back. Once you hand off your program, it's almost impossible to get it back. So my word of advice on this, what I've learned is when you're going on a 3 to 4 game losing streak, you need to rein in what's going on, whether that be over a play calling, right? Getting involved in something. Because at the end of the day, what I realized is some of those coordinators, they're going to do whatever's going to help them the most, if that makes sense, not what's going to be best for the team. And that's a tough lesson to learn, because after year 2, when I'm so far into it, I couldn't get it back unless I started just firing, doing all these other things. And that wasn't something that I was ready to do at that job at that time. But I learned now, like, the lesson learned from this is when you take the job over, slowly hand it off. I recommend to just about anybody, if you're not going to be the coordinator, be involved in the play calling, right? If you're not going to be involved in the play calling, be involved on one side of the ball pretty strong, pretty heavily. And that'll give you a chance to slowly hand that thing off. Has nothing to do with whether or not somebody else is capable of doing it. It's just your program. And like I said, when you're standing there in a locker room and nobody's supporting you, you can't give it away. So that's tough. And I don't know if you've ever been in a situation like that where you saw a head coach do that. And it's rough to get it back.
I can't say I've ever been in that type of a situation, to be honest with you. So
Probably never even thought about it, right?
No, I've never. I will say this: timeout. As a player, I have.
Yeah.
It's like my junior year at AU, right?
Mhm.
We're up. We're playing Bloomsburg, who's a really usually like a ranked good team. We're up in the second half, pretty big. They come back and they beat us. Okay. And show back up for Sunday meetings, and defensive coordinator was fired after week 1, just gone. Think about taking it back. So that's the only time I've ever seen it, and it was a shock. It was like a wow. Are you see? This after week 1? He went on then to go coach at Texas A&M and the NFL. So it's like what we've said. Everybody has a picture of you of where your record at is where you are. There's a lot of good coaches just get fired or leave and move around.
Happens a ton. That's what we talked about this the other week. I think this exact story came up because same thing happened week 1 at ODU, right? Our DC, we were getting points scored on us, like big points scored on us. Our DC was struggling. It was my senior year. Coach Cummings is obviously a big defensive guy. In the middle of the game, he puts his arm in front of him and just shoves this guy back and starts signaling our defense. He was like, I got this now. And I was yelling at him. And then after that, we didn't get scored on again. Coach Cody was wild. But at the same time, like seeing that feature, and now that guy's coaching at a way higher level, like a very high level right now, and doing a phenomenal job. So he had a tough moment. That was a little adversity in his career, and he was able to push through and obviously get better from it.
This next part is something like I've talked a lot about some randomness, but this right here is something that I feel like I could probably give a clinic on, to be completely honest. When you're losing, so let's say you're like me, and I try not to count how many games I lost in a row, but it was a lot. And you're sitting there and people are looking at you to fix it, right? They're like, hey, man, you're the guy in charge. What's going on here? Why are we losing? What I learned, I'd spent some time researching, talking to people, all these things. You have to come up with a systematic approach to examine why you're losing. Because when you're in the middle of that losing streak, you become almost so subjective over why you're losing. And it's really easy to blame things, right? So you get into the blame game. I'm blaming my OC. I'm blaming the DC. I'm blaming the kids. I'm blaming the community. That's not going to help anything. So when it comes down to it, I really, and this came from this, I'm not smart enough to come up with a lot of this. I'm smart enough to use it. But really, when you look at a systematic approach of examining losses, it comes down to 3 things, right? It comes down to structural, mental, or physical, right? So are you losing because you are not in the right structure? You're defending trips with 2 guys, they're throwing a bubble for 15 yards every time. That's a structural problem, right? Are you lacking run fits, right? That's structural problems, okay? That's something coaching can fix, right? You can get involved, examine it, fix it. The next one is mental, right? This is part coach, part player. So when you look at it like this, and we've all been a part of these kind of programs, the offense is asking people to learn crazy things, right? The language is too hard. On defense, we're putting our own players in binds. We're asking them to, hey, you got to drop to the deep third, but at the same time, you got to come down and run, all that stuff, right? Like you're putting them in a bind and hurting them. The other part too is the mental part is from coaching. Are you coaching what you know, right? So mental, that's the two mental parts that you need to examine from. And I got caught up in that because I got into this point where I almost thought it was me, right? Oh my gosh, do I just not know what I'm doing? So then you start scrambling and searching, right? And then the last part is physical. What physical attribute is keeping you from being successful, right? Is it speed, size, strength, right? So what you come up with is when you really put together a list on those things, you can come up with some sort of an idea to make yourself competitive, right? And also what that does when you're in a losing program and how you don't lose the kids, right? Because that's what it's all about. We're in this thing for kids, right? I always tell people all the time, listen, I don't care if you think I'm terrible or whatever. All I care about is if my kids want to play for me, right? So at the end of the day, by having a systematic approach without subjectivity in it, it allows you to talk to the kids on a real level, right? And explain to them what you think the problem is and not just we're terrible, right? So that is one thing that I would say for any coach out there to take that, figure out what's wrong with your program on those three things. And you'll get a lot better very quickly. So
I like that, Buckets, because it is very easy to fall into the only if we were bigger up front or if only we were faster. And I think there's been a couple times where I bet we've all been on staff before where we've had to be like, we have who we have. Like, we have who we have. Stop dwelling on it. Stop talking about it. It's not going to do anything for us. And I like that 3-bucket approach you came up with. I think that's a really good nugget.
It'll allow you, like, hey, physical, we're a spread team. We want to throw the ball. Well, you can't throw the ball. Nobody can catch. Nobody can get open. So you obviously know you can't do that. That's the big thing. But yeah, and once you take that approach, I never really had to examine losing, right? You never really think that you're going to have to do that. But at some point in time, when you've lost that many straight, you have to come up with some kind of a way to examine it. And honestly, that made a big difference in our program at that point in time. What we found out was we had structural problems. We were scared to let kids play football because we didn't want one-on-one situations or things like that. So that's part of it. I think the other one is, this is crazy for me, and this was tough. And this is probably going to hit home for a lot of people, and it's probably going to be very controversial. But I named this one, I didn't really mean it, okay? And why I named it that is because we used to talk about, this is what the program was based off of, right? Whatever. We would come in and we say, we're going to win because we outworked our opponent, right? So what do you do when you've worked as hard as humanly possible? I'm talking pushed it beyond the max and you don't get the winning result, right? So who's to blame now, right? So the kids have said, Coach, you told us that if we outworked our opponent, we were going to win. So something to think about is, don't ever say those things. Those things are not true. You can only, hype and slogans only work until you lose 4 games straight. Once you lose 4 games straight, your hype or your slogans don't matter a single bit. For example, when I was at Grove City, we were effort, attitude, toughness, right? Coach, we have great effort. We have incredible attitudes. We do everything right. And we're tough as nails. And we're getting beat by 48 points, right? We're getting running clocked. So my thing on that one is, what I learned is I didn't really mean it, right? I didn't really mean it. What I said and what would happen are two different things. So you have to focus on, for your program's big message, right? Focus on something that isn't going to, you can't say, if you do this, you will win, right? All right. You have to talk about things that are better as a person and what'll give you better opportunities, right? And that's how you have to do it. You're probably thinking through your mind right now of all of these acronyms and hypes and all these things that people are putting out there on shirts and wristbands and all this stuff. It's all crap once you lose 4 games, because kids don't believe it no more. So you have to come up with a better way than trying to hype your way into winning. So that's one thing I learned. I really didn't mean it, right? Because that's what I didn't really mean it. You guys outworked everybody, but we didn't win. So that's a tough lesson to learn as a football coach.
The best way I've heard coaches, because you said you can't be like definitive, give them like, if this happens and this will happen, is they leave it with, if you do these things, you will have your best opportunity to do X, Y, Z. Mm-hmm. I've seen coaches have not, sustained success doing that, but like it gives you the best opportunity for success. Because even if you don't win a game like you're not shutting the door on your credibility at that point with your team or your unit or whatever it may be.
I think just like with the kids, like telling them be emotionally attached to the process, not the result. Like just disconnect yourself from that. And I feel like that was the step that we took as a team is okay. And this year now it's ironic. Now we're at the point of who cares? Who cares what we've done before? But like before that, we were like, okay, we're going to be in the weight room. We're going to be the ones that work the hardest. But it doesn't matter what the result is, right? Like what we're going to do is just going to build it from there. And we didn't worry about the wins or the losses because none of that stuff mattered. We just talked to our kids about being emotionally attached to this process because it's going to teach you a lot throughout your life.
Absolutely. And I learned a valuable lesson along these lines is false positivity will blow up on you like a bomb. So when people see right through you, when you try to be too false positive, right? I thought at the time I could just breed positivity and be so optimistic that people would catch fire and they'd believe it too. When you're on a losing streak like that, it don't work that way. You have to start talking about what little things can you win at that point in time, right? For us, we had to start looking at how many first downs are we going to get? How are we going to be able to stop them on third? You know, I mean, like things like that. You had to start finding successful ways that are meaningful and doing it that way. Slogan wise, one of the things that I sat down and I really thought about as far as, hey, it's not tied to anything winning other than just being a great person and being the most prepared you could ever be. So we always talk about being intentional, right? We just be intentional about everything. If you're intentional about going to the weight room, you're intentional about what you put in your body, you're intentional about being the best person outside of football, it goes back to the opportunity of good things will happen to you, right? So being intentional, that's what we talk about all the time because it doesn't matter. You can be intentional and get beat by 48 and it still matters, right? I think that's a big deal. The other thing, the next thing I talked about is scheme is overrated, right? And why I say that is I look back on those years and I'm playing some of these teams and I hear some of the interviews and the coaches are like, oh man, we just win with who we have. And these guys are just not very good. And we're just going to do the best we can do. And then all of a sudden comes signing day and they've got a DN going to Purdue. They've got 10 kids signing Division II scholarships. And it's, no, you could have done whatever scheme you wanted to do, right? It doesn't matter if you ran the veer, if you ran the spread, you had talent, right? So at the end of the day, I think speed is king and you either have it or you're watching it. That's it. And if you don't have speed, I think you're in for a rude awakening as a football coach. Now, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. You better have some other attribute that's better than somebody, right? You better just be the strongest team you've ever seen. You better be the biggest team you've ever seen. But scheme is the most overrated thing you can do. We believe as coaches that we can out-scheme the next coach. And that's true if we're on a level playing field. If my talent's the same as your talent, then scheme does matter, right? But at the end of the day, we put too much emphasis on ourselves and we think we're more important than what we really are. I think it comes down to that. I think one of the most overrated things too is coaches that say they're system coaches, right? System coaches have talented programs because when you're in a program that struggles for talent, you can't marry one thing because every year is a crapshoot on what you're going to have. So I always laugh when people come to me and say, you got to run this system or this system. You better be super flexible and you better figure out a way to use what you have.
Yeah, or like you said, at least have a system that has some flexibility in it. You know what I mean? Like some things you could pull from, some ways that you could fit a personnel or match a personnel. I think that's really good. How many more you got on this list, man? I lost track. Where are we at?
I got 2 more.
All right.
We're on number 9 right now. Okay.
These are good. I just lost track because
you weren't saying the number. I was lost. I lost track too.
Sorry.
That's right. We know you can't count too high.
That's got to be. Listen, Varney, that has to be the biggest cup in America. You drank out of it 1,000 times, and you're still not tipping it up.
He's being intentional.
Being intentional about hydrating.
His hydration. He's intentional.
I'll tell you. Okay, number 9. Get back on it. The question you have to ask yourself that I learned is, what is discipline? And this is a question for you guys. All right, let's go around the horn here. Sayers, tell me what discipline is.
That's a good one.
If you had 6 questions for me, here's a question for you, bud.
I like that. Flop it up on us.
Yeah.
I think there's multiple different types of discipline. I would say, like, in the classroom looks different, in the school looks different. Having discipline, like, discipline can look different in all different areas, but I think like having discipline as a person that just has high character. And for us, that relates back to what we always tell our kids is like, character is what you do when no one's looking, right? Are you disciplined enough when Coach Sayers is in at school, or your ass is in class and not in the hallway? That's an issue we go through at like school for us. Or like discipline on the field. Are we jumping off sides? Are we, I think that word discipline, there's a bunch of words that I think we use as coaches that we just use too vaguely in this field that we work in. Is like, you can define those words multiple ways, like success. We can all define success in 20 different ways. I can define what you think a leader is in multiple ways.
So that's the question here. All right.
Yeah.
Stout, what do you think? What is this?
Dude, this is like a loaded gun because he has some fire written
It is,
down. And he's just like going
sure.
around. But I was going to say the same thing a little bit about discipline is what are the motives? What is guiding your decisions and your actions? And especially when it's adversity or nobody's watching. That's what my initial thought was.
That's pretty good. I like that.
Yeah, I think it's discipline is doing what you know is right, not because you love it, not because like it makes you feel good. It's just like it's an ingrained standard in you. Like if you say like I need to do this to maintain my health, like you're not doing it because you love it. If you consistently get after it, you're doing it because it's the standard of what you should be doing. There's no emotions to it. It's just this is the process. This is how it has to be done.
That's like Donnie. Look, I know Donnie's that type of cat. Donnie goes to the grocery store, leaves his cart, doesn't put it in the little cart corral. He's not disciplined enough for that.
I put my cart back and I fix other people's. I set a standard. I set a standard in front of people
too.
To me.
I'll take
people's carts and I'll stack it for
He's
them.
an Oxford man. Come on now.
Come on.
All right, Varney, spin it around on us because I know you got something now.
So really the lesson here is, all right, when I got to that school, they had this whole theory of what discipline was, right? Discipline is making people do things. And the correct answer, I think, when you really think about it is, can you convince your kids, right? There's a million definitions of discipline classroom. We're talking about our football program. When your kids fall back on it, how do you get your kids to understand that discipline is doing the right thing when the right thing is the hardest thing to do? Does that make sense? And honestly, I think that is a challenge that every football coach is going to have to come to at some point in time, right? You're going to have to reach that. For me, I reached it at a different pace just because when you're losing, everything is exaggerated. This kid got in trouble in the hallway. Okay. All right. Sure. When we're 9-1, nobody cared. But when you're 0-7, everybody's got something to say. So at the end of the day, I think the first thing you have to do, all of these other things that matter, you have to figure out what discipline is for your program and how you can get kids to do the right thing when the right thing is the hardest thing to do. And that's, you can do that. If you can do that, you can keep your kids on the right track, whether losing or winning. So it's wild. And you never really cross that path until you're standing in a fire and everybody's looking at you. And that's when you start to really evaluate and do those things. So just dumb stuff.
Good stuff.
Just dumb stuff. You know how it is. The last one is personal, right? On a personal level, right? Learning to own it. This was really hard for me. Okay. Learning to own it as a human being. I think there's two different things. People talk about being humble, right? Oh, he's just so humble. It's like, we're just going to go out there. We're going to give it our best. We're going to just line up 11 guys. We're going to try to move the ball. Okay. No, really, there's a difference between humble and humiliated, right? There's two different things. And I can tell you a story where I was on a sideline at one point in time, down 62 points, and a team faked a punt on me and scored a touchdown. Like that happened. So the line between humble and humiliated isn't as far as you think it is. And you have to make a decision at some point in time how you're going to handle humiliation as a coach on a personal level. So what do you do, right? You have to own it. That's what you do. You own it. And that's the hardest thing because we have pride, right? We're all prideful individuals. We all want to be the best and those types of things. But really, at the end of the day, you have to own it. Don't blame, but be very real with the facts that you give people. All right. So people like, I'm one of those people, you either love me or you hate me because I'm so direct on everything. But I've learned to be that way because if you leave any gray area, you leave area for people to take advantage, and you don't want that at all. Right. So you have to be very good. You know, the last one is don't let, like, part of this is learning to own it. Learning to own it. Don't let one loss turn into two losses. Okay. Or many losses. So what I did in this situation, and this is what I learned from it is, all right, to give a preference this, all right, paint a picture here. We're at Marysville High School, okay? And I'm not taking care of myself. I let one loss of football turn into another loss of life, right? Basically, like I wasn't taking care of myself. It was taking a toll on me, all of these things. So we're sitting there. I'm not mad about it or whatever. And our punter kicks the ball, and he kicks a negative punt at Marysville High School. And it was at that point in time where I let the loss of losing on the field turn into losing in my personal life. I ended up, I don't know what I had on that sideline that day, but my blood pressure after the game was 200 and something over 180. So during the middle of that game, basically my face went fuzzy, my hands went fuzzy, like I was in a tunnel, I couldn't do anything. And what I learned that day is just because you're losing doesn't mean you have to be a loser, right? And that's the hardest lesson of this whole thing that I took from it is just because you're losing, you don't have to be a loser. It means you don't have to carry it with you everywhere you go, right? It's not a coat and that's strapped to you purposely. You can take it off when you want to. And what I learned too at that point in time is when you're owning it, you also have to go at the people who are attacking you. Like, to be honest, when that happened, I didn't go in the locker room, and I had two parents basically say that I gave up on the kids and I didn't care anymore. And what I learned that day is I backed down. I didn't go at them because I thought it was the right thing to do. Just ignore it and move on. If I could do it over again, that following Monday, I'd have had them square in my office, and we'd have had a real serious talk about life and what's going on here. Instead, I let it linger, and it ended up turning into a whole big thing at the end of the year. So owning it's hard, understanding how you take humiliation and still move on, right? That's a tough thing. That is my 10 lessons learned from going through a very tough 3-year span of losing.
I like it, Coach. I want you to send that to me because I'm gonna type that up and put it in the folder, but I'm gonna do some stuff to it to make sure we could chop it up so everybody can see it, because here I am heading into year 15, and I just feel like that's a playbook I needed at a different time of life. And I'm sure I might need it again in the future. You know what I mean? But that's a playbook I think a lot of people, even if it's just a couple of those takeaways, could learn from, and it could help weather the storm. It might even help them turn the direction of what's going on. So I want you to send those to me. I really do. I think they're really – thanks for coming on here and talking about it. I think a lot of people would be shy to talk about things in the way you did, and to be able to pull all the perspective you had. And I'm not kidding, man. If I'm a young coach, I'd be listening to this. I'd be writing stuff down. Or if I'm just a coach in general who's doing this a while, I think there's at least one point almost everybody could have gotten something from today. And you did a great job, man. We always love having you on.
I appreciate it. It was one of those things where I wish some people would have told me these things when I was battling, right? Like I wish I didn't have to find out the hard way. So hopefully it'll help somebody. And if it doesn't, at least they'll get a laugh out of it. So it's all good.
There might have been a few.
I think every one of those points were perfect, Coach Varney. I obviously have talked to you a ton, like even during those years that I was losing. So I learned those things. I think I learned the one I learned the fastest is just become a humble person, right? I remember telling people like, no, we're about to smack these dudes. My first year just telling cats every game, now we're smacking these dudes. And then you're down 42-0 and dudes are like, what happened? Now it's just, we're going to go out and compete. You know what I mean? We're going to go give it our best effort. But Coach Varney, we appreciate you. Our listeners, we appreciate you. Make sure you guys download, subscribe, comment, add any suggestions, send any messages to us. Make sure that you guys also get with all of our sponsors and contact them so they can meet all of your needs. And another thing, too, we have our clinic coming up March 15th. We have a great lineup of speakers, which Varney is going to be part of that, right? You see him there. which will be a great time, and a social after. It's going to be it'll be a very good time for us coaches to get together. I would say probably one last time right before we start hitting it pretty hard here.
It takes off.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. Listen, you guys do a great job of highlighting football and coaching and also a little bit of life too. You know what I mean? I think you guys do an outstanding job, and I like listening to it. I appreciate it, and keep going.
All right, man. We're excited to see you again here in a little bit. See you, everybody.
Coach.